You are welcome. This is the Messiah Revelation Ministry. We are a ministry dedicated to the end times. And today we are looking at 4 tests, the test that we should use to decide who are the people of the book. There's an issue, those who are in Israel, those who were gathered in 1948, are they the people of the book? Or the people of the book are a different group of people who are scattered over the world? Which is which? Are we talking about the Jews who are in Israel, who were gathered in 1948? Or are we talking about the descendants of the people who were captured, particularly those who were enslaved during the transatlantic slave trade? Who is who? And I have developed 4 tests that I'm going to use to determine who are the people of the book, whether they are the Jews who are in Israel or they are the people, mostly black people, who are scattered over the world. And the first test that I will use is the genealogy test. Do you trace your ancestry to people in the Bible? We are looking at genealogy of the people in the Bible, and many scholars and evangelicals, particularly European American evangelicals, and some of them assume that the Jews who are in Israel, they are the chosen of God because they can trace their ancestry to the people in the Bible. And of course, there's a counter argument by the Hebrew Israelites, and they argue that when you look at the Old Testament and when you look at genealogy and when you look at experiences, particularly the captivity of the Hebrews in Egypt, which was a black nation, there's no doubt that the people of the book, the children of Jacob, they are black people. Of course, they refute the argument by the Eurocentric scholars, the argument that there's no black presence in the Bible. To counter that, I read 2 books, and I recommend the books. The first one, written by John Johnson, a black American, Black Biblical Heritage. And it's a book that shows the black biblical heritage and traces the ancestry of people in the Bible, and he looks at their ancestry and concludes that a lot of people in the Bible, in the Old Testament and in the New Testament, they were black people, and so it is not true that there were no black people in the Bible. And the second book, written by Rudolph Windsor, also an African American, and he wrote the book From Babylon to Timbuktu, and that book is very, very useful. I consulted it, and he also talks about how the Hebrews who fled Jerusalem after AD 70, how they moved from Babylon, the old Babylon, and how they fled to Africa and became the subject of the transatlantic slave trade, and they ended up being on slave ships, and they were shipped to North America and other places in the world. And so, which is which? You are using the genealogy test. Can black people trace their ancestry to people in the Bible? can the Jews in Israel 1948 trace their ancestry to the people in the Bible? So that is the genealogy test. And the second test that I have developed is what I call affliction intensity test. Affliction intensity test. You cannot claim to be a child of Jacob unless you have to show how you fit into the curses of Deuteronomy 28, because the curses in Deuteronomy 28 applies to the chosen of God, the people of the book. Can the Jews fit into the curses in Deuteronomy chapter 28, particularly Deuteronomy 28, verse 68, where the Lord told Moses that his brethren, they will be shipped into Egypt again, and it's written in Deuteronomy 28:68, where Jews sent into captivity into Egypt again. When you are talking about Deuteronomy, you are talking about the last book written by Moses after the exodus from Egypt. And so when the Lord was telling Moses that his brethren will be shipped into Egypt again, we are looking at the episode of the transatlantic slave trade. Do the Jews fit into Deuteronomy 28, verse 68? Were they shipped into Egypt again? And the experiences, their genocide experience in Germany, how does it compare with the genocide of the transatlantic slave trade? And when you are doing comparison, you can get 12 years of persecution by the Nazis, the Germans against the Jews, experiences spanning over 12 years. And you have to compare the intensity of the affliction with the intensity of the affliction of the Negroes, and you will come to a conclusion. So here we are comparing the genocide of the Jews with the genocide of the Negroes. Which one was more intensive, and which experiences fit into the cases in Deuteronomy chapter 28? Is it the experience of the Jews or the experience of the Negroes, the Hebrews, the black people whose ancestors were taken into captivity via slave ships? And when I'm looking at the affliction intensity test, I recall a formula that was developed by a gentleman in Ghana, and he is a tour guide, and he is posted at the Elmina slave dungeon in Ghana. And when I went there at Elmina slave dungeon in Ghana 2022, I talked to him, and he explained that the Holocaust of the Jews is nowhere comparable with the Holocaust of the black people, the Negroes, the Hebrew Israelites. And he gave me a formula which he developed, and the formula is the 400 times 7 times 50 formula. 400 times 7 times 50. And I asked him to explain what he means by 400 times 7 times 50. And he explained the 400 represents the prophetic 400 years of captivity, and it applies to the Hebrew Israelites. And then the 7 represents the millions of people who died every year as a result of the transatlantic slave trade. And of course, he's saying that in a year, As many people as 7 million died. And when you are talking about those who died of starvation, those who died through the Middle Passage, and those who were killed, and we're talking about 7 million people every year, as compared to 6 million Jews who suffered genocide in Germany. And so you compare the 7 million people, the Negroes who died every year over the world, you compare that with the 6 million Jews who died during the genocide that they suffered in Europe for a period spanning 12 years. And then the 50 represents the number of slave dungeons dotted over Africa, from where the Eurogentiles captured the Hebrew Israelites and sent them aboard slave ships. In Ghana alone, there was a time that there were over 30 slave dungeons. And these are the dungeons that house the kidnapped Africans, men, women, and children, who were taken later aboard slave ships to North America and other parts of the world. And so the formula 400 times 7 times 50 is a formula that shows that the so-called affliction of the Hebrews is nowhere compared to the affliction that were inflicted on the Hebrew Israelites. And so the conclusion is that the Hebrew Israelites, based upon the affliction that they suffered, they fit Deuteronomy 28 more than any other people in the world, including the Jews. Of course, the Hebrews can show their slave ships, but the Jews will not be able to show their slave ships. And so they do not fit into Deuteronomy, particularly Deuteronomy chapter 28, verse 68. That said that the brethren of Moses will be sent into Egypt again, this time in ships. The Hebrew Israelites can show you their ships, and they can refer to the ship that was owned by Queen Elizabeth I that participated in the transatlantic slave trade. And here we are still talking about the affliction intensity test that I have developed, and I've developed to compare the affliction of the Jews with the affliction of the Negroes, to show who really are the people of the book. And so as I'm doing the affliction intensity index, I'm focusing largely on the transatlantic slave trade, and I'm looking at the transatlantic slave trade from three phases: phase one, phase two, and phase three. Phase one, you look at the slave dungeons in Africa, where the Hebrews, the children of God, they were stored as commodities. And here you look at the condemned cells in the Elimina slave dungeon in Ghana, where people were starved to death. You look at the rape chambers that existed in the slave dungeons, where African women were raped. Of course, African men were also sodomized while they were in captivity. And the Atlantic Ocean became graves where the Negroes, or rather the Hebrews, where they were buried. They were buried under the bed of the sea, the Atlantic Ocean. And when you go to phase two, or the affliction of the Hebrew Israelites, I focus on the journey every year, the passage from coast to coast, from the Negro land, the slave coast, to the places of affliction, North America, along the ocean. Turbulent experience. Many people died. They died of diseases, and some of them were tortured while they were aboard the slave ship. The way they packed people, that even was a source of affliction. And remember, 1781, the massacre aboard a British slave ship. The ship was sailing from Accra, Ghana, and heading towards Jamaica, a British ship, and black men, women, children, they were thrown aboard the ship. They were jettisoned, they were thrown into the sea, and the ship owners, wicked ship owners, the crew members, they filed for insurance. Of course, it was legal to state that the Negroes were property and they were insurable property, and so the slave masters can file for insurance because they lost their property. The property were Negroes who were thrown into the sea to save the ship from sinking. Atrocity aboard the slave ship. That's phase 2 affliction. And phase 3 affliction refers to the intensity of affliction that the Negro had to go through when they reached their destination. They put oil on their faces to let them look good. They were fed to let them look good so that they can catch high prices for sale. Slave auction in North America. And from plantation, they also were sent into prison, and they are still undergoing different forms of bondage and captivity for 400 years, beginning from 1619 up to present for the prophetic 400 years. And I did a video recently about the Nottoway plantation, a plantation which was built by a gentleman in White Castle, Louisiana, and it was a plantation for slaves. And so many atrocities went there, and included not only rape and murders, it included eating the body of slaves, slave barbecue, eating somebody's body because the person was a slave. And they enjoyed the meat of a slave, an African slave, used as barbecue at the infamous Nottoway plantation in White Castle, a town in Louisiana in the United States of Africa. And so how do you compare the genocide of the Jews with the genocide of the Negro? 12 years of affliction of the Jews with the 400 years of affliction of the Hebrew Israelites. How do you compare the 6 million death of the Jews for the whole period with the 7 million deaths of the Hebrews every year? And how do you compare the rape of the Negro and the killing of the Negro and the tradition of eating the body of the Negro, Negro barbecue? It happened on slave plantation. The tradition of eating the bodies of Negro, the tradition of putting black babies in waters so that they will be fed to crocodiles. It happened in America. Oh, wicked America. Oh, Egypt, America. Oh, America, a citadel of captivity, a pinnacle of persecution. Your judgment is coming. And so you should know who are the people of the book, using the affliction intensity test that I have developed to compare who is actually the chosen of God, either the Jews or the Hebrew Israelites, when we are looking at the curses and the affliction that are enumerated in Deuteronomy chapter 28. Moses could not fathom that his brethren will be sent into ships, including a ship owned by Queen Elizabeth, and in America, they will be killed and their body will be used as meat. They will become a source of meat, and their children, babies, black babies, Negro babies will be put in waters so that crocodile will feed on the babies. It didn't happen in the first Egypt. It happened in the second Egypt. Egypt, America, Sodom, America, wicked America. And so you should know who are the chosen of God by looking at the affliction intensity test, which I have developed. The third test that I have developed is what I call the future regathering test. And when I talk about the future regathering test, we are saying that the children of God will be gathered in the future. And so we have to look at who is going to do the regathering, and from where will the children of God be regathered from. This is what they call the future regathering test. And here I rely on the Bible. I'm using the King James Version, and I'm looking at the prophecy in Isaiah 11, verse 10 to 11. And in that day there shall be a root of Jesse, which shall stand for an ensign of the people. To it shall the Gentiles seek, and his rest shall be glorious. And it shall come to pass in that day that the Lord shall set his hand once again the second time to recover the remnant of his people, which shall be left from Assyria, and from Egypt, and from Patros, and from Cush, and from Elam, and from Shinar, and from Hamath, and from the islands of the sea. This is my future regathering test that I have developed. And so who is going to do the regathering? Is the root of Jesse, the Messiah? When would that be? It will be in that day, the day when the Lord will come and do the regathering. From where? We've already talked about the places where the chosen of God will be gathered from. And of course, Cush is among one of those places, the islands of the sea. The prophet Isaiah saw America as an island located beyond the rivers of Ethiopia. The islands of the sea, Haiti, Trinidad and Tobago, Jamaica, of course, United States of America. They are all part of the islands of the sea, and the Messiah will gather his people from these areas. The Jews claim that they are already gathered, and so the Messiah will not be of any use to them because they are already gathered, quote unquote. They were gathered by President Harry Truman of United States. They were gathered by the Lord of England, Lord Balfour. They were gathered by the financial oligarchy, the Rothschild family. And when you read and when you watch the preaching from the pulpit in America, you will hear Pastor John Hagee, an evangelical in America, who will be saying that it was through the finger of God that the Jews in Israel were gathered. Where were they gathered from? Is it the Caucasus Mountains? Is it Eastern Europe? Is it Ukraine? Is it Spain? Is it Portugal? Or were they gathered from the places listed in Isaiah 11, verse 11? Are they using the scripture? Do they believe in the Bible at all? Do they have a Bible? Which version do they have? Is it the King James Bible or the Queen James Bible? And if they have the Bible, how are they interpreting the Bible? Do they see Cush? Do they know what Cush means? Do they know what the islands of the sea means? Do they know who the root of Jesse is? If they don't know, then I pity them. But if they know and they are lying to congregations, they are lying to the world who the children of God are, they should know that per Revelation 22:15, liars will not have any part in the kingdom that is coming. They have to repent of the lies. And so by the future regathering test that I'm using, I'm concluding that the 1948 regathering is not the regathering that is spoken of in Isaiah chapter 11, verses 10 to 18, because the regathering spoken of by the prophet Isaiah will be done by Yeshua, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, in the last days, and it has not happened yet. And so we are going to the last test that I'm using to determine who are the people of the book. Is it the Jews who are in Israel, the 1948 state, or the Hebrew Israelites who are still scattered over the world? The last test that I have developed is what I call the confirmation test. And when I say the confirmation test, I'm relying on vision that I've received from the Lord. And here I will briefly talk about the vision of April the 5th, 2007. It happened when I was in Baltimore, a city in Maryland in the United States. In that vision, the Lord Yeshua Jesus Christ and John the Baptist, they appeared to me in the vision. It was a night vision, and they appeared as black men, and they had a hair like Rasta. And of course, it confirms what is in the Bible, because a Nazarite that Jesus was, a Nazarite that John the Baptist was, a Nazarite that Samson was, their hair was different and looked like a rasta, and that is the appearance of the Messiah, the Lion of the tribe of Judah. In 2012, I also had another vision, and in that vision occurred in Ghana, and in that vision, 2012, during the time of Easter, the sons of Issachar appeared to me in a vision, and they were black people. And so that is a confirmation to me in a vision that the people of the book, they are of black heritage. They are black people. And that is a confirmation, is part of the confirmation test. And here, when we talk about the confirmation test, we have to go to the book of Revelation. And in two places, the Messiah gives a warning about an identity theft, about who the chosen of God are. And the Messiah said it in Revelation chapter 2, verse 9. I know thy works and tribulation and poverty, but thou art rich, and I know the blasphemy of them which say they are Jews and are not, but are the synagogue of Satan. Revelation chapter 3, verse 9. The Messiah also repeats the same thing. Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews and are not, but do lie, behold, I will make them to come and worship before thy feet, and to know that I have loved thee. So the Messiah is confirming through the book of Revelation that in the end of this, there are people who call themselves Jews. They are not, but they are of the synagogue of Satan. And so, as we are trying to test the Bible, the scriptures, and prophecy to know who the children of God are, the question you ask is, who are the Jews and who are the synagogue of Satan? And here we refer to the words of the Messiah, which are written in red ink in my Bible, indicating that the Messiah himself knew from the beginning that in the last days, at the time that is preparing to come, there will be people in Jerusalem who claim to be Jews, the chosen of God, but they will not be who they claim to be. They will be the synagogue of Satan. And so that is part of the confirmation test. But the fourth confirmation test is a DNA test. Of course, if you are a chosen of God, if you claim to be a descendant of Aaron, a descendant of Zachariah, a descendant of Moses, a descendant of Reuben, a descendant of Issachar, you have to be able to prove if you provide a reliable DNA test. DNA test is scientific and could be faulty, but at least in Israel today, they don't want people to talk about DNA because it has opened a can of worms. It has exposed the falsity of those who claim they are Jews and they are not, they are of the synagogue of Satan. So you cannot rely on DNA. It is banned in Israel. And so it's a confirmation that those who claim to be the chosen of God, they cannot claim it by DNA because it has opened a can of worms. It has exposed the falsity of those who claim to be Jews. They are not, and they are part of those who have taken the identity of the Hebrew Israelites. And so this video is to let you know that those who claim that they were gathered in 1948, they are not necessarily the chosen of God. They are not the Hebrew spoken of in the Bible. And I have used 4 tests today: genealogy test, affliction intensity test, and the future regathering test, and the confirmation test, based upon the vision that I saw about Messiah, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, who appeared to me April the 5th, 2007, as a black man, alongside John the Baptist as black men, and in 2012 in Ghana, the Sons of Issachar appeared to me in a vision, and they said, "We are the sons of Issachar. We are the sons of Issachar." If Samson was a Nazarite and had that rasta hair, what is his race and skin color? And what is the race and skin color of his brothers? If the Messiah appeared as a black man, if John the Baptist appeared to me as a black man, if the sons of Issachar appeared to me as a black man, was it not a confirmation of who the true chosen of God are? I leave my email in the description box, raptureafrica@yahoo.com.